Good afternoon. Thank you for joining today's event, Homegrown Eats, sponsored by the Iowa Work-Based Learning Coordinators and hosted by the Iowa Intermediary Network. My name is Stacy Asher, and I'm with the Hawkeye Community College Service Region. Our moderator for today's event is Jolene Miller from Iowa Western Community College. Let's begin today's event by meeting our panelists. Rachel Hautz, Tommy Hexter, Charity Nebel, and Deb Herbold.
Thank you all for joining us today. I'm very excited to be able to moderate our session today, Homegrown Eats. With getting started before our panel discussion, we are going to take a little bit more of a interest into our panelists today. So we will start off with our panelist introduction and then providing a little bit of their career background. So we'll go ahead and we'll start off with Rachel.
Hi, I am Rachel Hautz, and I am the owner of Arnka Acres. My background is I didn't go to college for farming or anything, but I moved to the country and discovered that I love to grow vegetables. But I grew way more than we needed. So I started doing farmers markets, and that was good for a while, but then found it wasn't the best fit for our family. So I looked into other ways of selling, growing and selling produce directly to customers. And the CSA, community supported agriculture, that came on my radar, and I looked into it, and it actually is a really good fit for our family and like just my personality and how I like to do things. So this year, 2022, will be our 9th year with CSAs.
Thanks, Rachel. We're looking forward to hearing some more from you here soon. Tommy, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, guys. My name is Tommy Hexter. I am the owner of Grinnell Farm to Table, which is a little local food grocery store in Grinnell, Iowa. I recently graduated from Grinnell College in May of 2021, and I studied food systems and anthropology at the college, and so kind of fell into ownership of this store, which has been around for about 10 years. I grew up on a small scale vegetable farm in Virginia, and we did some CSA type stuff, some farmers market stuff on 2 acres in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And then Iowa brought me to college, and kind of thought that I would be going more into the farming route, and then ended up being really entranced by the more of the grocery store element, the middleman, and working with farmers to get products directly to consumers in a model that is kind of similar to Rachel's, a little different, but it's an alternative. It's called a food hub. And so that's what I've been working on.
Nice to have you here with us, Tommy, and we're excited to learn some more about Grinnell Farm to Table. And moving on to Charity. Welcome to our event. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Charity Nebel, and I work for both Iowa Public Radio and Iowa PBS, so public radio and public television. And I, for 10 seasons, was the host of a program on public television called Iowa Ingredient. And on that program, we showcased producers all over the state of Iowa doing innovative things with local food. And we also brought chefs on to cook with local food and all kinds of things. And the next person is going to tell you more about that in a moment. But I also host a daily interview program on Talk of Iowa, or on Iowa Public Radio, called Talk of Iowa. And I often interview people involved with food systems in Iowa and try to help Iowans understand our food systems, because there is a lot of ignorance about how what we eat gets to our tables. But when I was talking about Iowa Ingredient, I can't take credit for any of it, because Deb Herbold is the inventor of that program, so she can tell you all about it.
All right, and then moving on to Deb, can you tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Everybody, I'm Deb Herbold, and Charity Nebel is awesome. I executive produced Iowa Ingredient on Iowa PBS, and it started as an idea where people could talk about food but also talk about their lives at the same time, because food is the one thread that connects us all. So we have worked with Rachel in the past, a long time ago. We went way up to see her, and we've worked with lots of different growers and farmers from young to old, all different kinds of ingredients, and met so many people in the food industry that are so creative and so resourceful, and it kind of changed our lives. So that's what I did. And I got to work with Charity Nebby and all the great growers, and that's me.
Thank you, Deb. Well, it's very nice to have all of you here with us today to speak to students and educators about farm to table and kind of the entire world of agriculture and food sources in the state of Iowa. So we're going to start off with Rachel for our session today. Rachel, can you tell us about some of the products that you grow at your farm?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we are a CSA, that community supported agriculture farm. And just in case people aren't familiar with that, what that means is our customers pay at the beginning of the season. So like before they've actually gotten any produce, and they're saying, we are loyal, we're committed to you for whatever the length of the season is. And for us, it's 20 weeks. And so then what they do is they just come out every week and don't have to pay anymore. They just fill their basket with the types of vegetables that they want. So because we have these families that are committed to getting produce from us for 20 or more weeks if they want to, we have to grow a wide variety of products. We can't just give them the same thing every week. But mostly like what we grow is what's most popular at the store is like most popular here, you know? So we grow lots of different vegetables, the spring growing stuff, the stuff that's in the summer, and then all the way into the fall as what we grow. Do you want me to give you specifics, or is that good for you?
If you can just list off a handful of specifics, that would be great.
Okay, like I said, the things that are most popular at the store tend to be the things that we grow the most of here. So it's like tomatoes, sweet peppers and hot peppers, cucumbers, carrots, potatoes, and then we're actually most known for our salad greens. Any of the greens that we grow, lettuces, spinach, kale, those are most popular for us.
And that kind of leads us into our next segment here. We are going to take a look at Rachel's segment from Iowa Ingredients, which had a focus on kale. So we'll be watching that video here in just a moment.
There's an ancient Turkish saying that says that for every leaf of kale you chew, another stem is added to your tree of life. 1 cup of kale can have more vitamin C than an orange. Vitamin A, vitamin K, lutein, and antioxidants are also at the top of kale's nutritional list. Whether harvested when the leaves are small, tender, and mild, or after a frost when a sweeter taste emerges, kale has achieved rock star status in the veggie world. If we ever needed evidence that small family farms still exist and thrive in Iowa, we can see it, hear it,
Can you girls just come on and help me, okay?
and even taste it at Arnka Acres Farm in Dyke.
We have a lot of radishes ready.
Rachel Houts, her husband Andy, and their 3 children grow a variety of vegetables, including kale, for their CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, weekly offering.
After a few years of doing farmers market, I realized it wasn't what was best for me with the young kids picking and then sitting at the market all day, which is fine for some people, but we looked into some other options, and the CSA is something that really stuck out to us. We like the idea that we could have people out to the farm. I love to tell people and show them what we do.
With gardens full of radishes, kohlrabi, and other veggies, the family works together to make sure they're growing the best produce possible, including a fairly new to the spotlight Iowa veggie, kale.
We grow 3 different kinds of kale. The kale is classified by its leaf. They all taste similar, but they do have a little bit of variation. Some are more subtle than others. One of the curly leaf this is Maribor. When it's growing all together, it's dark purple in the middle, and then it gets greener as it goes out. We also have the red Russian kale. That one I like because it's a biennial. So if you plant it 2 years in a row, then after that you don't have to plant it anymore. It just keeps coming up. And then this is a new one for us this year. It's the black palm. It's more of a mixture between the curly and flat leaves. And it comes up growing looking like a black palm tree.
With turkeys, a pony, chickens, cute kittens, sheep, donkeys, and other animals on the farm, Arnka Acres is a fun place for kids and grown-ups to learn about interesting veggie varieties and to experience where their food comes from.
I had no idea how much people would like to.
That was a great look into the farm for all of our students and our educators, and probably a great look back for Rachel, Deb, and Charity as well.
Yeah.
So Rachel, when you're picking produce to sell, what are some of the considerations you take into factor when you're selecting what you're going to grow?
Yeah, the obvious question or answer is the first thing you have to look at is what are your growing conditions, like the length of your growing season. I have to look at my soil conditions, the temperatures that we have. I mean, all of those factors have to be considered first, just because I want to grow something if it doesn't grow well in my area. I love avocados, but not a good fit, for an Iowa summer. So that's the first thing you have to look at. Another thing that is really important is you want to be able to sell the produce. You don't want it to just grow, even if, it grows well in your area. You really need to know what your customers are looking for. And that seems hard maybe at first if someone is just starting out, but then I would say start with the things that are most popular, the most common vegetables. And then as you start going, whether it's to farmers market or wherever it is you go, ask for input from your customers. That's how we really learned what our customers wanted us to grow. And that has helped us, through the years. And we kind of tweaked then what we grow because of that. And then the last thing I consider is what I actually like. Because if I don't like it, then I'm not going to enjoy being out there, and I want to be able to eat my own things that I've grown, my own produce. And another benefit of that is if you actually like what you're growing, you'll be more excited to talk about it and tell your customers all the ways you use it and how to store it, because from experience. And then it'll help those become more popular items with your customers too.
And then are there any guidelines that you have to meet or follow to be able to sell your products to the public?
As small or considered, so we're considered a small farm. A lot of people that go to farmers markets might be considered a very small farm. So there isn't a lot of actual guidelines that they have to follow if they're, selling under a certain amount and selling directly to the person that's going to be eating it. So the main one that you have to really know about, though, is it's supposed to be whole, raw vegetables. So I can't make up, even though we have salad greens, it's not chopped up lettuce, or it's not cut up like cubes of stuff. It has to be whole, raw products in order for it to be sold in Iowa. And then the other thing that, you should think about is it's not Iowa law, but sanitation practices, as you want your clean tools, clean hands, clean packaging area. All of those things are really important when you're thinking about that this is someone's food that they're going to eat. We do tell our customers to, it's not considered ready to eat, because that is a different type of like product that a different guideline. So we tell them it's not ready to eat. So hopefully they'll take it home and wash it, but you can't guarantee that, you know? And so you just want to make sure that you're following like good cleanliness and sanitation practices. Those are probably the two biggest things that I tell people.
That's something that our FCS culinary students watching this will definitely know: cross-contamination. That's one of your vocabulary words you learned very early on, and kind of seeing that in practice. Our last question for you, Rachel: what would you say you enjoy most about working in this industry?
For me, it is without a doubt the reason why I chose the community-supported agriculture is the relationships. A lot of times when people think of farming, they just think of, you know, like an old farmer sitting in a tractor. And while there is, definitely those, that's not why I went into farming. You know, I just really love that connection with the customers when they come out. And part of ours is we're big on that community. So we really want people to come out. We have a petting farm. So the members come out, the kids, you know, go out and they get excited to see the animals, especially in the spring with the baby animals. They plan the play set. The members sit and chat with each other and with me. And that's by far my favorite part of this. And yep, it's through the growing of the vegetables that we all have that interest, but it's the relationships formed.
Rachel, thank you so much for joining us again today, and thank you for sharing a little bit about your journey and some more information on CSA farming. Moving on to our next panelist, we have Tommy Hexter from Grinnell Farm to Table. Tommy, can you tell us a little bit more about how you came to be owner of Grinnell Farm to Table and your journey from Virginia to Iowa?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I grew up on a little 2-acre vegetable farm in Virginia. We also had about 50 to 75 laying hens, depending on how hungry the foxes were around the time. But I, from a very young age to about the time I graduated from high school in Virginia, me and my 2 sisters and my 2 parents really enjoyed taking care of the farm together, eating a lot of the food together. And when I came to school in Iowa, I was immediately struck by the difference in scale of agriculture here and the potential for, you know, a lot of farming to get done. And I got interested in the questions of what's being grown here, how's it getting marketed, and who's the end customer, who's getting that product at the end of the day. And so at Grinnell College, I was able to study within the anthropology department, food systems, and particularly local food systems. And so I got connected with a group of Iowans called the Food Hub Managers Working Group. And that's who I did my senior project on, as they've kind of been working to develop a statewide market for local foods, selling products to and from each other all around the state. And my food hub, called Grinnell Farm to Table, was started back in 2011. And of all of the food hubs in the Food Hub Working Group, we are the smallest one in the state. There's about 14 total. So sometimes we consider ourselves a food hublet, like a piglet, but a hub. So.
And how many farm or food producers do you currently work with?
We work with, on any given month, between 12 and 20 local food producers. And they produce everything. We've got a few different meat producers. So we have everything from chicken to goat to lamb to beef to, there's one more I'm forgetting about, pork. And then we carry dairy product from Radiance Dairy in Fairfield, Iowa. So we've got yogurt and milk, cheese available that way. We work with Paul's Grains, who carries a whole supply of organic grains that his family has been growing since 1960 in Laurel, Iowa. We've got tofu, we've got jams, we have breads, and then some vegetables throughout the year from a local farmer named Jordan at Middleway Farm, who also runs a CSA. So these kind of markets can overlap a lot, which I think is important to highlight.
You have a little bit of options for everybody. That's all sorts of walk of life, from your vegans to your meat eaters, kind of everything in between there.
We try to be a one-stop shop.
Yeah, one-stop shop. What are some of the steps that need to be taken to get a food product from the farmer or food producer to your market?
It's a great question. So we try to make it as easy as possible for the farmers to work with us. There's a few different hoops and certifications you can jump through as a food hub. And we as a food hub or hublet have jumped through the least of them. So we just have a farmer's market certificate, which basically means that anything you can sell at a farmer's market, so the regulations are pretty limited for that, can be sold through our food hub. One exception would be like for the meat, it all has to be USDA inspected at one of our lockers here in Iowa. So basically a producer will reach out to us and we'll say, hey, we'd like to market our product through Grinnell Farm to Table. And at that point, most of the time, actually 100% of the time since I've owned, we've accepted the producer on. They can list whatever price they want on our website. They have full access to the website, and then they can list what quantity they have available for every product. And our customers will come through once every month and place an order for the specific items they want. And then after that order is placed, the following Wednesday, all the producers will bring all their food to town, and we'll put it in one bag, and the customers will come and pick it up. That's the basic process.
So that just kind of answered my next question for you, which would have been, how would I order, and then how do I get my food? So you can order online, they bring it to the market, they pack it all up nice and neat for you, and then you're on your way.
And there's food hubs in most.
One last question. Oh, go ahead, Tommy.
I just wanted to point out that there's food hubs in most areas in Iowa at this point. They're starting to spread out. So if you're not near Grinnell, if you're near Des Moines, say, then you could look into the Iowa Food Co-op, and they provide to a bunch of surrounding communities in Des Moines. And then Decorah's got a few, Cedar Rapids and Iowa City as well. So take a look in your local area.
So our next question for you is, from your experience working with the Farm to Table, how have you seen an economic impact on the prices of food? Does that drive the prices for the farmers market?
It's a great question. And I think when we're talking about the price of local foods, they're generally higher than what we see in the grocery stores. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. And I think there's a certain value associated with local foods and a certain time commitment from farmers like Rachel that makes that price a little bit higher. But there's also a number of market forces at play here, I think, which would be like supply and demand, your basics. And so, for instance, I'll just give a quick example. Something that we have low supply of is carrots through our food hub. That's something that only one producer in our hub sells. And so he's able to sell his carrots for like $6 for a 2-pound bag, versus something like you might know in Iowa in the middle of the summer, there's just tons and tons of sweet corn, and sometimes the price for sweet corn will go down below what you can find it for in the grocery store because there's so much of it available. And so I think there's a number of different factors at play. It has to deal with real producers needing to make a living, and then trying to, at the same time, serve as many people as possible. And so I think there is a lot of questions to be answered that we need to answer together about how do we make local foods something that can be on everybody's plate around the state.
And I feel like we have definitely, as an industry, gone more towards supporting local and, supporting people within your community, whether that be food products, homemade products, or just, getting your tires changed at the local tire service rather than going to a chain. So supporting our local industries. My last question for you, Tommy, is what would you say is one of the best parts of your job?
It's a great question. I think it's exactly what you were just mentioning. It's being a local business. And, I've seen pictures of Grinnell and other Iowa small towns 40 or 50 years ago, and I know that they were a bit different than they are today. But that we have so many people that still live in these small towns who really want to keep it at home, and being able to rebuild those networks, it is as beautiful as it sounds. It is connections that you can't replace, and I love being a part of that. So
Thank you again, Tommy, for sharing some of your insight with us. And we're going to go ahead and move on to Charity and Deb. Charity and Deb, with getting started, we are going to show a clip of some behind the scenes from the Iowa ingredient episodes that we'll be showing here in just a moment.
One of the things that I love about the show, of course, is the food. And we are not one of those shows that just has food that looks good. This is real food, and it really has been made, and we get it done. I taste it, the chef tastes it, we cut a piece, or whatever we have to do to make a pretty plate. We take pictures of that plate, and pretty much as soon as that is done, the crew descends like a swarm of locusts and eats everything in sight. We have almost never had leftovers.
I don't want those to be too hot. We could use the original ones.
Oh, they're gone.
Are they?
Yeah, these will be fine, I'm sure. I'm sorry, things don't sit around here.
We have a lot of different people who work on the show. We have lots of talented technicians and videographers, lighting designers, audio techs, video engineers, editors, sound mixers.
That will be a part of those
A lot of different people bring their talents to the show. And those people might work on other projects here at Iowa Public Television too. They might work on Market to Market or Iowa Outdoors, the fair coverage. But when we all come together to do Iowa Ingredient, it really is a special, magical time. And I think they love it because they get the opportunity to taste some wonderful Iowa ingredients.
Beautiful.
That is pretty.
Yay.
All right.
Well done.
Okay.
Good job, good job.
I like to think it makes the chefs happy to see the crew devour the leftovers. It kind of makes them feel like they did a good job.
Kind of just a nice little look back as we get into our segment with Iowa PBS, Iowa Ingredient, Charity, and Deb. So Charity, I'm going to start off with you. Throughout your time as the host of Iowa Ingredient, how has the consumer market shifted from, buying your groceries at a big box store more towards buying local and doing the direct farm to table or CSA markets?
Well, that's a really hard question. And I can only give you my impression because I don't really have the numbers. And I also feel like our numbers are not particularly accurate on that level. I do a lot of interviews with Iowa State University Extension. And when I first moved back to Iowa in 2010, and I did an interview about local food, the figure was that 15% of the food grown in Iowa is consumed in Iowa. And then about 3 years ago, I looked for that number again and it still said 15%. So I think there's a lot of stuff going on that we don't really know about. But I do think that awareness of local food has grown dramatically during the 10 years that we did the show. And I think that there is a really warm, fuzzy feeling about buying local. I do know that, what Rachel does, what Tommy does is really hard work. And when they make the connections with customers, people are really willing to pay for, this food. And once they eat it, they know it's fresher and they know it's better for them. And, it's a really powerful experience. But I do think that there's still a real struggle to get people to make that connection. And just before the pandemic struck, back in Grinnell, Andy Dunham, who had been running a CSA for many years, he shut down his CSA because he just really couldn't make ends meet. Now, the pandemic actually has ignited for a lot of people more of a market for local food, especially the first year of the pandemic. People started panicking about, are we going to be able to get things? Can we trust things that come from other places? And that created kind of a resurgence in CSA membership. I've seen that in the Iowa City area, where the wait lists for CSAs got a lot longer in 2020, and then 2021 seemed to be a really good year too. And Rachel might have more insight on that. So I think that we love the idea of local food. I'm not sure it's growing as much as it seems like it is. And I also know that a lot of farmers run into real structural problems. Tommy was talking about the importance of food hubs, but it's also, if you are growing grass-fed beef, it's important to be able to find a locker who can process that beef and get it to customers. And I talked to a farmer recently who was trying to schedule the beef, the cows that they were growing, and wasn't able to get an appointment for over a year. Well, that throws away or throws everything out of functioning for that farmer. So we still have a lot of work to do, I think, to build those structures. But I think that's a huge area of opportunity, not just as being a farmer, but being someone who helps create this infrastructure that gets local foods to people. That went a little off topic, but
that was a great in-depth explanation, though, of kind of where we started to where we are now, and kind of some of the challenges that our farmers are facing. You said in the introduction that, during your radio show, that you talked a little bit about some misconceptions that people have of farming in Iowa. Can you tell me what some of those are, and, kind of the truth behind them, behind the misconception?
Well, I think that the main misconception, two things. One, I do think that agriculture is a really important part of our way of life in Iowa and our economy, but such a small percentage of Iowans actually engage in agriculture that I think that there's a huge disconnect between, those of us who live in Iowa City or live in Des Moines or live in Davenport, and people who live in rural areas and are actually growing food and producing food. So I think that there's a big disconnect there. And I really believe that as much as we see rows of corn and soybeans when we drive down I-80, a lot of us really don't understand agriculture in this state. So that's one thing. But another thing that I have found over and over again is that there's this idea of a huge gulf, a huge divide between the kinds of small scale vegetable farmers like Rachel, organic farmers, and conventional farmers. And they're, different businesses, but when you actually talk to farmers, they have so much in common. So I feel like a lot of our ideas about, who is good and who is bad, and old-fashioned ways of doing things versus new ways of doing things, I think that a lot of those ideas, we love to see things in black and white, and they're not so black and white. And I feel like we create a lot of artificial division that doesn't need to be there. That the vast majority of farmers in the state of Iowa, no matter how they farm, they do actually care about the land and are looking for stewardship opportunities.
Thank you for sharing those and kind of, talking us through the different ideas of, really what we see and what the reality is. I know we have lots of students joining from Iowa that will have some from Des Moines or Iowa City that they have only lived in the big city their entire life. And then we have students coming from Trainer, where it is a town of, 3,000 students, and most of them have grown up on farms. So it's very interesting for our students to kind of see and to hear that point of view as well. Going on to Deb. Deb, can you tell us a little bit about the process of creating episodes of Iowa Ingredient and how you would find your farmers?
Yeah. So finding our farmers, when we were on Iowa Ingredient, when we would plan out a season, we wanted to kind of surprise viewers sometimes with what was grown here. So we did some traditional ingredients, and then we tried to find really strange ones and profile those growers too. So I will admit that we had trouble sometimes finding growers and farmers who would produce the ingredients that we needed, or Mother Nature was not our friend sometimes. And we would, a good example is peaches. We wanted to do a show on peaches, and one season didn't work. That peaches just, there was a late freeze or something, I can't remember. And then the next season we were able to find a farmer, a grower who was had peaches on their tree. But I am not kidding, there were 3 peaches on that tree. And we made a whole feature on that ingredient, and it looked like there was a ton and there wasn't. So it was a challenge sometimes to find farmers who grew the things that we needed. But that was just for the weird stuff. And back when we did Rachel's feature, it's so funny to hear that now, that kale was relatively new on the scene, when now, it's totally not. So things change fast, and you get to know a lot of people in this business, just like Tommy and Rachel. People all know each other. So it was a challenge sometimes, but you hit the phones and you find someone.
That's a very good point of, you have those early freezes, you have hailstorms, you have windstorms, we have floods. It all affects our economy in that sense. Can you tell me, what would you say are some of your most memorable moments from working on Iowa Ingredient?
I would say 2 answers to that. One is being in the kitchen with everybody and having a chef take Iowa ingredients and turn them into something fantastic. I would say every single chef that we talked to, that we interviewed, that we cooked with, appreciated the fact that those ingredients were grown locally and talked about the flavor of them shining through, that it was the ingredients that made the dish great. And then I kind of liked the quirky moments too, where there was times when we were out shooting at a farm, and there was, it was so hot that we were sweating and trying not to sweat, or videotaping with Charity and fighting a thunderstorm coming and asking her to talk faster so that we could get that done in time.
Don't forget about the time we tried to wrangle a bunch of goats into the shot.
They gave me a bucket of food and told me to walk behind with goats following me and tall grass. So yeah, there's times like that I'll just never forget. So there's a lot of memorable moments. And I will say the one big thing about this topic, growing food, is we met farmers who were young and vibrant, who intended to go into this profession. And we met older people who were reinventing themselves. And that was so cool. They had been maybe soybean farmers their whole life. And this is a family farm. And they're now going to do vegetables or goats or something else, make their own cheese. So that was a really cool part, wasn't it, Charity?
Oh, absolutely. And, you were talking about the years that we couldn't find the ingredients that we wanted to find. One of the big things that working with these vegetable farmers, horticultural farmers, that I really learned was the diversity of what is grown on these farms is really exciting, because if you have a terrible year for, tomatoes, you could be having a great year for sweet potatoes. And so, the diversity really makes the farms resilient. And also, if you look into the benefits for the land of having those kind of diverse crops, they are, just myriad. So there's so much exciting stuff going on there. You know, it's fun to talk about the food. It's super fun to try the food. And then you dig into things a little bit deeper, and it's really, really exciting.
I love the goat story. That just made my day.
I didn't like that story.
I thought it was super fun.
Here, do it again, Deb. Deb, go back. Didn't work.
Well, I mean, we also shot in front of a field of cows one time, and we were desperate for the cows to look at us, and they just found us terribly boring. So you get a lot of cow butts and things like that. So cows are usually so interested.
You never know what you're going to get with animals. It's kind of like working with children sometimes. You're not sure what you're going to get that day.
Yep.
For sure.
We have one last question for all of our panelists, and we'll kind of go in a backwards order. So we'll have Deb start, Charity, Tommy, and then Rachel. What advice would you give to students that are looking to pursue a career in this style of industry?
I think Tommy hit on it perfectly. We discovered it over our 10 years too, is relationships. Make sure you're passionate about what you do. And if you choose this profession, just talk to people. Iowans love to support other Iowans. And so if you're going to do it in Iowa, make sure you have a network of people who appreciate what you do. And if you don't, just keep looking. Don't give up. Reinvent yourself. Do it. Rachel did that too. Just keep reinventing yourself until you find that little piece of heaven that can be your own.
So I'll just jump in. Deb is absolutely 100% right. And to add on to that, I would say, don't have a fixed idea of what you can do. You know, I think a lot of people think, well, I want to be a farmer and I want to grow food, you know, in this way. And then once you start exploring the structure of local foods, there are so many ways to be involved, so many different opportunities. And there are things that you can do that are actually more lucrative than being a farmer. So, which sometimes is important if you're trying to pay off student loans or, you know, whatever, support a family. So be creative and use those relationships to learn as much as you can. Keep an open mind and don't be afraid to try different things.
I'll kind of emphasize what Charity said there with, I think the number one thing I'd like to hit on is get involved, because Iowa is an agricultural state. And, you know, this is a shirt that got me inspired originally. And we've probably all seen this before. It's on the University of Iowa football helmets. America needs farmers. And we need farmers, because right now there's only one farmer to every 300 plus acres in Iowa. So we can add some more farmers. But in addition to that, we also need other things involved in our food system here, like farmers market managers. We need chefs. We need grocery store owners. You know, all these sorts of different jobs within this industry that all tie back together, back to our one common place here in Iowa. And there's no shortage of ways to get involved, and even just talking about it is one way to get involved. And as was mentioned earlier, I think a number one way to get involved is just to find someone who's interested, and more than likely we all kind of know each other. It's a pretty small world. And although the four of us might not have all known each other today, I'm sure we have some common connections. So I'm passing on to Rachel.
Yeah, I mean, obviously just reiterate what everyone has said. If you aren't familiar with the different things that, you know, way of growing the vegetables, and you don't want to just be a farmer, or you think that's all there is, I would say go and visit farmers markets, go and visit a local farm. So that way you can get the connections if you don't have them yet, and you can ask questions and find out, you know, all the different ways. Like Deb and Charity were talking about, there's so many different ways that they were supporting local foods without actually being farmers. You know, there's lots of different ways. And then for me, like I said, the CSA is a different type of growing than a lot of people. I mean, people have heard of CSAs, but they may not really understand the difference. And I would just say that if you like the idea of, making those relationships, and you are a more social person, and you like to write newsletters, and do all those different parts of farming. And then farming is just a small part of it. I mean, albeit an important part, but a small part. Then a CSA might be a good fit for you to either be the actual farmer or just work on a CSA as being the person that writes the newsletters or runs the pickups or different things like that.
Well, thank you everybody for your time today. Rachel, Tommy, Deb, and Charity, all of the information that you shared today has just been wonderful and really provides a new insight to this industry for our students here across the state of Iowa. Again, I just wanted to thank you one more time for sharing information, and be sure to check out the IIN.org for past recordings and upcoming events. Thank you and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks. Hey, Deb, I just had to say one more thing to you about when you're talking about the behind the